Career ladder, something that hopefully you'll learn a little bit more when you leave, by the time you leave this room. I want to start by finding out how many people here are core personnel. How many people are core directors or managers? How about core administrators? How about none of the above? Oh, good. Who are you? Tell me all about yourself. So this particular talk is about climbing the ladder, course-specific job descriptions, etc. It is actually something that has been mentioned many, many times at ABRF, and also has been mentioned even at ABRF earlier this week. But the difference between that talk and this talk is the other talk was more about the core director's path, and this one is more about core personnel, though it does include directors as well. Plus, what we were trying to do, at least on some of these talks, is to show how some of what we learned at ABRF is being utilized into different institutions. And because it's about the career ladder, your core path, we are starting by introducing who we have and then having us tell you our particular paths. My name is Katherine Hale. I go by Kat. So if those people who know me, I have cats. I'm at University of Texas at Austin. I'm Deputy Executive Director, Center for Biomedical Research Support. We have Brooke Ring. I'll let her introduce herself, but hopefully some of you saw her on the first plenary session. Anna Webb, recent promotion to Associate Director. And then last, even though he's not here, he's in a different session, a lot of the slides that I have are from Andy Chitty. I included some of them, and those that I did not use, I've left later on in the presentation because they can provide information for you on how OHSU set up their core ladders. So my core path is very pretty, but even I can't read that. So I'll just have to remember it. So my undergrad was at Rice University. From there, I got my graduate degree at the University of Texas at Austin. Did a postdoc at UT Southwestern in the Center for Biomedical Inventions, where we actually spun out an invention. And then that went into a small startup biotech. So I was in that small startup biotech for a little bit. But of course, it went the way of a lot of small startup biotechs, especially considering that it was right around September 11th. And so I looked for another biotech, because that was always my career path, is I wanted to go into industry. So I went to another small startup biotech called PicoScript. And that's when I realized that what I like to do is help people. And that's kind of the whole idea. I think I'm going to use the other mic. Because that's kind of the idea behind, I think, a lot of people who are in cores, is you like helping people. And being in industry, sometimes you have to do the same thing over and over again. But cores are so dynamic, and then you can actually see the research being pushed forward, knowing that you have had a portion of the results of that research. So I went back to the University of Texas, MD Anderson Cancer Center as junior faculty. I also, because I had a cool instrument, worked on a sequenome in the characterized cell line core, and I helped with some of those really early tests where you take patient samples, take a look at the particular drugs that they were on, and try to match mutations to see responders, non-responders. That was a really cool time to be doing research, because what I was doing in the lab was having a direct impact on patients who were at MD Anderson. From MD Anderson, though, I was a core director, and I realized that there were better ways, there should be better ways to run cores across the university, because people had their own billing system, they had their own tracking of samples. So when the position came available for a director over all the cores, I applied for it and I got it. I was there for many years, and then I had the opportunity to come back to the University of Texas at Austin, and that is where I am now. A lot of you, of course, you know that cores are both research, academic, and business. You are little businesses. You're not allowed to make money. You're not allowed to lose money. Core facilities kind of sit in that spot. You have to be better than perfect in a lot of ways. And you interact, because you interact with so many different areas, it really is, I think, something that is very rewarding as a career goal. Some of the things I'm saying, you know, you've lived this. You know the difference between what is a general research staff and a core staff position. But part of what we want to do in this session is remind you of the various advantages and skills that core personnel have, so that you can make a case for a career ladder within your own institution, or a more professional salary. So here we have personnel who are general research staff. They're in academic research. They're often looking to learn. So they don't know everything, they're learning. And then they're going to take what they do and they're going to go elsewhere. They're not necessarily there to help the next person in the lab, although some people do. But it really is an individual approach. Versus core staff, you know, you're there, professional. A lot of people have been in core positions for a long time. And we need to really show to administration that more technical skill set is something that should be rewarded. So core staff, it's often your goal, your career. You've got expertise that is highly marketable, because you've learned all kinds of information about how to do troubleshooting for not only just one instrument or one protocol. It's oftentimes you're hit by different project, different samples. So that highly skilled technique and troubleshooting technology that you have needs to be recognized. And yes, when I was at MD Anderson, one of the things I had to do for our Cancer Center Support Grant was try to show how many publications had been supported by core facilities. There were way too many publications for me to look through all of them, but what I was able to do is look through about half of them, at least half of the ones that were research articles, and I found that at least half of the publications that I looked at had at least one core facility that supported that research. So really, for the publications and the research for the MD Anderson, for that to be of the highest quality, the core facilities have to be at the highest quality, which means we need the highest talent, the best talent. And if you actually add clinical trials, it was closer to 70%. So core personnel are valuable, and we need to be seen as being valuable. Of course, because you're valuable, oftentimes core personnel, if you don't have that career track, you can be easily swayed, stolen by companies. And you know what? That's not necessarily a bad thing. I went through various companies for a while. I want you all to remember that as we talk about career path. There are some of the cores that are really, or some of the skills that you learn are ones that not only are highly marketable within other institutions, it's industry, it's academia, it's actually, being from Houston, some people will also go into oil. So there are all kinds of different industries that can use people who are highly skilled at troubleshooting. So how do you convince your institution that you need this career track? Well, and why would you want to have a defined career track? Oftentimes, if you can have your institution get a defined career track, it is a more professional salary range. So that can help retain talent. You actually see where you're going rather than just, a research assistant, et cetera. If you also have that career track, you can also help the core personnel see what it would take to get to the next rung on the ladder. You don't necessarily want to be in a position that you're doing the same thing all over and over and over again. It'd be nice to know how you could do the next step. And also in this presentation, I've got a couple of references. So if you need to make a proposal, you can take a look at some of what has already been published and use that to help further your response. So for the core science job family, this is again from Andy Chitty's. It really requires someone or the family requires people who are innovative, have technical ability, service, and that's something else as a core personnel that you often have to have that is not necessary in research. You're constantly interacting with graduate students, undergraduates, faculty, and having that ability to listen to someone and figure out what exactly it is they need, even if they're not necessarily able to tell you in the best possible way, you have to interpret it as what it is that they want. So in essence, we've got two different types of talks today, two different presentations, and that is if you can't have your own career track, how can you potentially try to leverage a career track that is within your own institution and turn it into a core career track? And then the other process is how do you build career tracks from the ground up? So all cores provide services, technologies different between cores. So when you have these career tracks, you really also need to keep in mind that what is good for one core isn't necessarily good for another core. And how can you make a career track that kind of embraces that diversity in a way that administration can see and help you appropriately find salaries for. Also, some cores require specific certifications like histo. So you might need to have a research histotechnology degree. And if you have that type of a degree, then that's another area where potentially you should have a higher salary so that, again, you don't get stolen by industry or even stolen from within the same institution. This is one way that Andrew Chitty mentioned, as what they were able to do is they have a variety of different core salary titles, but then because different technologies are kind of in different ranges, so if you have a bioinformatics person coming in, they may have to come in at a higher salary than someone who is working in the lab doing bench work, or an animal technician. And then you might need to have even higher salary range for someone who's coming in and working in a clinical area like a clinical MRI. So what it is that he did working with his administration was came up with those job classes, but then came up with sliding scales and different groups so that you could group the different types of core facilities into the ones that are higher paid or lower paid. So here I've got at least a little bit of information from Andy's presentation. Further on, I'm not going to go through it. He goes into detail about some of those job descriptions. At University of Texas at Austin, we also have the idea of different salary ranges for different technical people, but we don't have core tracks. Instead, we have different titles like clerk, technical staff, research staff, and then admin. And what I wanted to point out here is that we have had people jump from one ring to the other, one rung to the other rung. So we have had people who started in as the store clerk learn about the finances within a core, and then jump into the admin track. So that it is possible not only to move within a particular ladder, but across ladders. One thing that both Andy and also someone at Baylor, who also established these core ladders, mentioned is that if you are successful in setting up a core ladder, you always need to reconnect with your admin, especially your HR, to make sure that they still understand the various core tracks that have been set up and why they've been set up. At MD Anderson, they also attempted to do core tracks, but within a particular type of core, so a flow 1, flow core 2, et cetera, et cetera. But those titles were then used by the clinical track, so it kind of lost the fact that it was a core track and then became more of an institutional, job description. So constantly making sure that administration knows about what it is you're doing and why it is you're doing and why we need these special titles. In addition to, you can't actually be static. We know that not only are core descriptions, technology's changing, but the people who actually need to run those technologies, they need to change. It might very well be that you've got a technology that goes across different cores. So in some ways, you might need someone who is both good at sequencing and then imaging, and that should also be reflected in your abilities and then your eventual core projection. A lot of people are here because we know that there are changes, indirects. We've talked about this a lot, potential decrease in grants. I want to remind all of you, I said that the reason that we want to have core tracks, career tracks, is that the institutions want to retain you, want to retain core personnel. But you're all marketable. You saw that my path was not straight. I want to remind you that, paths don't always have to be straight. You can find interesting things if you deviate. So I'm going to stop here and switch to the next presentation. Oh, and please hold questions to the end. If I can. This one? Oh, hey. No.
There. It was on that screen.
Oh, it was on that screen? Okay.
I'm going to use this mic so I can. Okay, well, hi everyone. I am Anna Webb. I'm also at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm the director now of 2 core facilities, microscopy and flow cytometry facility, and then a new core that we're just setting up now to support what was shared, scattered, walk-up instrumentation to have some kind of administrative oversight over those instruments that get kind of lost and broken over time. So what I want to talk about today is what a group of core directors at UT Austin are trying to do, which I've titled Making It Work. That we are, at least at this stage, not trying to pursue a core-specific job title track, but figure out ways that we can, within our group, standardize levels of existing job titles so that we know, at least for us, what does success across different cores look like. So just to introduce myself, my own career path, how I've moved through core facilities. I have a bachelor's degree from Louisiana Tech University in biomedical engineering, so I am one of a few core directors who does not have an advanced degree. If you are in that same role, I would love to talk to you about your career and our shared interests. And then I joined a microscopy core facility at the Texas A&M Health Sciences Center then. I think they're now integrated into the university, but came out of undergrad into a core facility to be the support person for microscopes, primarily confocals. After 10 years there, I joined the University of Texas at Austin, also as their light microscope support person. And I've put here, Kat introduced what we have at UT, the research engineering / scientist associate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I started as a 2, became a 3, so that's just a little introduction of how my career has moved so far through these weird job titles. And then I was promoted to a title of assistant director of the microscopy and flow cytometry facility, which is a junior level of director, but there was no other director position above me in the management. So if you're in a director position, there are a few levels that you can move through: assistant to associate to just plain director, without significantly changing your role. You still have the day-to-day oversight of a core. And then just last year was promoted to associate director, so that would be in my own little career promotion ladder, the next title that I was able to learn or to earn. And that included taking on the shared instrumentation facility, part of new core that we're setting up. So just to talk a little bit about specifically the microscopy and flow cytometry facility. Since we have an established core, this is really something that I'm interested in for my staff, of how to advance their careers. So the way that we work is primarily training people for self-service instrumentation. We're available for helping with their experiment planning, troubleshooting. We provide really detailed training and assisted use where if someone weren't pursuing training, they can still get good data, both for light microscopes and flow cytometers. And we are doing a lot of contribution of our ideas to someone's project, but we don't have a funding model where any of our people are on individual research grants. We're just helping to execute their projects, often improving their projects in major ways. But we only are occasionally acknowledged as a facility, some level, acknowledged as an individual, less, co-authorship, rarely. So we don't have that typical output to show what an individual staff person has contributed, which I know is a common problem across probably all cores. So this is just to introduce in our own core where I have found a difficulty is to promote people from a 3 level to a 4. As you increase in responsibility, the descriptions get a little more vague. They focus more on independent research product in the description of the job. So what I'm trying to identify is we have this description of what a RESA level 4 is. Don't worry about reading it in detail. It's pretty long and wordy. But I've highlighted what doesn't apply really to our day-to-day. All the parts of this job that I would have a hard time showing that a person in my team does if I wanted to move them into this position. But in that same description are a lot of words that I think could describe what we do. So what I would like to do, and then in partnership with other cores, is to pull out that language that is relevant and define job duties that actually do support that kind of work. We do this, and it is part of this job description. And then continuing on for other levels, finding work that works within these duties. So this is each of those broken down, and my thoughts of specifically for microscopy and flow cytometry, what we do that would be under this definition. So I have excerpt part, but plan, direct, and supervise the work of technical operations is entirely what we do. So that could be consultations. It could be evaluating instruments. It could be planning upgrades to our technology. It's oversight of instrument pairs, quality controls, making sure that our technical operations are continuing. Billing and budgeting would be under the supervision of a technical operation. Wide latitude for creativity is the entire job, where method development, instrument design potentially inside of a core, coming up with creative solutions to problems. If someone has a sample that doesn't fit, they're trying to figure out experiment timing and can't get it to work, we're really the ones who are then helping them to make that possible. And then adapting experiments where someone comes in with a paper, they want to do this. It doesn't work exactly as written on the instrument that we have, but we're making that possible. We're advising them on what they can do to execute that. Preparing proposals to contracting agencies is instrumentation grants that my specialists can write major portions of instrumentation grants. Maybe we're working with me as a director with a PI, but that would be direct grant writing that they can do. Developing procedures to be used to attain such results. Maybe the experiment to get the results was not designed exactly by someone on my team, but they are developing the procedures often to get to it. This would be strategies for acquiring data, how to execute someone else's experiment plan, and then supervision is a lot of most higher level job descriptions. So that could be direct personnel management. Junior core staff could be supervised by higher level core staff. It could be helping a director with hiring, being in charge of interviewing if it's a technical expertise position, having someone on my team who has that expertise to participate in the interviewing would be really valuable. But I also think this could be training and oversight, because a lot of what we do as a primarily training-based core is teaching someone the proper way to do something and then following up with them to correct errors when they don't. So that is reviewing the work of a research staff. Not directly, not in their reporting chain, but it's a position of supervision inside of the core. So all of that to say, none of this has been run by HR. I don't know if they agree with me. But we would like to figure out, inside my group of core facilities, which is the Center for Biomedical Research Support, which Kat is our oversight for, how we can think about these basic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 job levels, and then expand definitions to fit the variety of cores that we do, which is sequencing, electron microscopy, MRI and other small animal imaging, bioinformatics, proteomics, mouse engineering. So the first level struggle is just for what microscopy and flow does that meets these job descriptions. Next level of struggle is, what about all the other core jobs, which are very different, but we're trying to use this same vague ladder. So this is what we have so far, which I am going to open up.
I told you you'd get data.
And then move this. Okay, so to make it visible, it's pretty highly zoomed in, so I'm going to be doing a lot of scrolling, but that's okay. So what we're trying to do is come up with categories of work that is done in cores, and then map responsibilities onto what are those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 RISA levels. So this, I don't want to dig into too much detail. I'm happy to share this. Also, it's an early draft. We've had eyes from a few core directors, but definitely not all of them, so this is going to change a ton as it grows. But the basic idea that I want to go through is, based on the HR job description, what experience does someone actually have to satisfy that level? Because that would be a limitation in someone's ability to move up to the next if they just don't have the education or equivalent work experience to satisfy that job. And then across these categories, which could be teaching outreach, if that's something a core does heavily, it could be method development / research, someone that's doing a lot of dedicated bench work may have a lot of work that's done in that category. Equipment, which could be assisting with repairs, conducting routine maintenance or QC, overall management of a lab, and then business and funding. So if there's a position that is assisting a director in some way or managing budgets for their projects, that could be a level of responsibility that could increase. The overall progression is one of increasing independence and new responsibilities in that role. So a level 1 generally is supervised. Someone with more experience is checking that their method is good, they're working according to standard protocols, and then as you step up, more responsibility is given to someone who has the knowledge and the experience to make changes to protocols on their own, to run standard procedures by someone else, but get the results independently. Like maybe they are given a higher level task and then sent off to execute it instead of being supervised every step of the way. And all of that starts to build, at least for the cores that have been asked for their input so far, different duties. The thinking is, if an individual core does part of the description, that's fine. We want to make this broadly adaptable, which also might make it pretty wordy. But if someone, say, in the example, design and build custom instruments, you might not do that. But you might be someone with sufficient technical expertise to say, our users really need this instrumentation. Here's how I'd like to implement it in the core. And you're really directing that instrumentation purchase, even if you're not developing it in a custom way. The other piece, so I'm moving around a lot and not giving everyone an opportunity to really read this, but please forgive me. The other piece that was added after feedback from directors is how to acknowledge effort and customer service, which are not defined at all by the research roles. And that is a huge part of what success in a core looks like. So these are added on as kind of soft skill factors. So they can be included in the evaluation, not mapped onto levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of job positions, just levels of increasing excellence in that category of work. So someone could contribute more to team projects, could take on more leadership roles in team meetings. Someone could be much more responsive in customer service or proactively seeking out new relationships with the core to establish new business. All of that could be reflected by a higher level of performance in these two soft skill categories. So the way that this hopefully will work is that each director thinks about one of the members of their team, evaluates where they would say this person is at, and that gets a scoring metric, including where they would be evaluated in the soft skills path. And also will, I hope, give our staff members the ability to look at this and say, what could I be doing to move to the next level? What does it mean to add on to my job in a way that is moving up to a new position? Because then they might want to actively work with their manager to figure out ways to add those kind of responsibilities so that they can be pursuing that next path. And then all of that goes into scoring, which is not zoomed, and that's going to be, I did it. So this is my basic way to come up with a number, which hopefully HR will like, that this is not just an idea of we think this person's job is defined by that, but we've done a little bit of math and we came out with this and it makes sense. Where each of the categories plus the two additional performance evaluation categories gets its score from the matrix, whatever level number it was received. And then the director can weight two of the categories or mark it as NA. Some cores maybe never do education or outreach. That's not part of their service. Other people might not participate in the business of the core. That's not how they run. So you could just say, this is not something that I want to evaluate in my positions because it's not relevant. Or you could say, what we care about is really equipment and method development. Those are most important. So if someone is not performing as well or not doing the job duties of another category at the same high level, it doesn't matter because that's not the mission of the core to really execute those duties. And that gets a weighting. Some are 1, 2, or 1.5, kind of according to a director's priorities. And based on that, so let's say someone is doing those things and then these are important, or I guess I could have put, nope, that doesn't go there, it goes here. And They're doing pretty good at those things. So then it comes out with, based on pretty simple math that's going into this, that probably could be better. I'm not sure how to figure that out yet. What number they get, and the suggestions then of what score falls to what category, or to a job position category. So this would give someone an idea of, do they feel like they are fairly at the level that they should be? If they come up with a 5 and they're working at a 3, why is that? And then also a way for directors to communicate with their team, here's why with this matrix, I can't at this time promote you to another level, here's what I want you to do to move up to that next scoring category, whether that's performance, whether that's additional duties. But what you would start a conversation of what needs to happen to move along that ladder, or start a conversation of why someone hasn't. All right, so I want to, oh Lord. Get back over here. I want to find my mouse again is what I want to do. There we go. Return to this. Nope. Oh, because it's here. We did it. So that is all to say I have a spreadsheet, basically. I don't really know if it's a good spreadsheet yet. We have not moved anyone up to a new position according to this spreadsheet. Where we are right now is the idea of this, the building of it, and it needs to start being tested by other cores. So a few have already tried to score their staff members according to this matrix, and I think we're gonna have a follow-up conversation of what they found that wasn't a good match, where are the categories that they couldn't really identify what their people do to score them appropriately, and then expand from a few core directors in testing to all of the directors of the core facilities in the Center for Biomedical Research Support to make sure, at least according to our organizational model, does this work for us? And then we will try to expand this to the other career paths that Kat talked about, that we also have administrators, we have supply centers, we have directors. Everyone needs some way to expand to stay fulfilled in their position. So we want to try to build this not just for our research staff, but for everyone who's employed by our core facilities. So that is it for me. I just wanted to say some thank yous to Kat for inviting me and giving me a deadline to really push this project forward. The 3 directors who have so far given their feedback and have been really excellent about helping me build this out in a way that works for them so far. Jessica Podner of our Next Gen Sequencing Core, Doug Beffroy of our MRI Biomedical Imaging Center, and Maria Person of our Proteomics Core. And then my own team with their titles. You can see my problem of moving from a 3 to a 4. We have a couple of 3s and 1 2. They all do excellent work, and they deserve any ability that I have to give them ways to move up to the next position. Thank you, everyone.
So before we go on, does anyone have something like this? I guess that means everyone learned something.
Someone did, they're not here, but I heard in a talk yesterday.
Okay, we're going to go to our next speaker. Brooke, hold on.
Okay.
We'll see if I'm any better at getting the next presentation on. No going that way. No, the answer is no, I'm not any better.
You're probably better than I.
Drag it way to the left. Other way.
I think it's,
Yeah. Is it coming back?
no, oh, wait, there it is. We should have Anna do them all.
There's a physical gap in between the 2 screens, and somehow it's that distance.
That's at the end. Hey, there we go. Hello, everyone. So I'm here to give you a little bit of an international perspective. I'll keep it brief, though, because it applies to us. How many Canadians are in the room? Oh, a couple of them. Wow, so enthusiastic. Great. Yeah. Great. So, yeah. Here we go. So I'll just do a brief introduction, and I'll tell you a little bit about my career path, and then I'll go on to kind of how the system works in Canada, or what the vision is, and then what we do at my own facility. So I am Brooke Ring. I have a master's. I am the manager of operations for the Queen's Cardiopulmonary Unit, QCPU, which is the largest core facility at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. And I am also the associate director of operations for the Translational Institute of Medicine, which QCP was in, and it's like an umbrella organization for a bunch of translational services outside of core facilities. So I'm going to tell you about my accidental path to leadership. Okay, where are we here? Yeah. So my background, I have a bachelor's in biochemistry and molecular biology from Trent University, which is a tiny university in the wilderness in Canada, and I also have a master's in life science. Shortly after my time in Trent University, I became a lab manager, also accidentally, and a course instructor, even though I only had a master's degree, but that's how we roll up in Trent. So I taught 2 courses in infectious disease and virology, because I worked in a virology lab. But Trent University is an institute that focuses mostly on environmental studies, so I wanted to get into people, so I applied for a job down the road at Queen's University in Kingston, and I got a job as a research assistant for a brand new PI who had never run a lab before. He was a clinician scientist, so he has 75% of his time was in the clinic, and the 25% of his time was dedicated to research. I did not know this when I took the position, so I thought I was taking over a maternity leave, not running an entire lab and a team of people with a PI who was very absent, but I learned a lot. I worked for him for 8 wonderful years, learning how to run and manage a lab with a team of students. And then, as most of you probably have experienced, funding got tight after about 5 years of funding. And they didn't know what to do with me. So some other people needed some assistance in the lab, and I ended up working for 5 different investigators in the pathology department, as well as a small accidental core. So when I say small accidental core, it was a histology lab, so pathology does a lot of histology, obviously. And what had happened was they were kind of doing okay. And they just got dumped with a bunch of equipment that they didn't know how to run, which I'm sure some of you might be familiar with that situation of like, what do I do? So they hired me because I have a lot of application specialties. So I kind of ran around and did the legwork for this small core, and that was my first step into core facilities, and I thought, wow, I am actually providing more for more people, and I'm distributing my services and increasing everybody's research capacity just with this little core alone, and that's my first taste of working in a core. Eventually, after doing that for a couple of years, I got a word that they were looking for a manager at this brand new core facility, the Queen's Cardiopulmonary Unit, and I went over there and I kind of tricked my way into getting a job as the manager there. At the time, this core facility only had about 4 people using it, and they had a team of like excellent international scientists. That was fantastic. 5 years later, we have over 100 different users at our facility, which are internal, external, and in industry, and we've grown from a team of 4 to a team of 9 scientists. Eventually, I skipped one, but eventually I was given the opportunity to do a leadership course that was an 18-month-long course at Queen's University, and this allowed some credentials for me to make the jump into a higher administrative position, which was the Associate Director of the Translational Institute of Medicine. And because I hate free time, I'm also a PhD candidate who is studying core facilities and the landscape in Canada, looking at best practices and measuring impact. Oh, there's something, this is an old slide. I should also disclose, I guess I didn't upload the latest slide deck, but I also am the CEO of a company that does professional development for sciences. So anyone here who's from Canada that's interested in hiring a consulting company to come and give highly impactful workshops for your scientists for soft skills and stuff, I do that as well. So that's my little disclosure. So what gave me a little bit of a superpower into working in a core facility is I have all 3 of the realms of clinical, of basic research, clinical, and industry. So I started working as a molecular biologist in this lab. I worked on something called TET2, and I was looking at its mechanism and its impact on blood cancer, myelodysplastic disorder to be specific. What we ended up doing is we found some link. We got a bunch of clinical samples, and we created a genetic discovery panel for them. And we said, hey, this is amazing, but how can we make this more useful and broadly applicable? And so I started getting samples from all over Canada and even some parts of the US to test out this panel. And we approached Thermo Fisher, who everybody knows Thermo Fisher, and they helped us validate and create the oncomyeloid panel. This panel is now commercially available and sold and used at hospitals all around the world for the early diagnosis of multiple forms of blood cancer. And just a little bit about the applications that I specialized in. I, once upon a time, was a confocal microscopist. I did a lot of flow cytometry. I do biomarker analyzing, and then next generation sequencing is definitely my biggest specialty. All of these things, all of these applications that I had, one, lent to me for being a really good applicant for a manager for a core facility. Our core facility doesn't just do microscopy, it doesn't, or just flow cytometry. We do over 7 different types of applications. So we do bioinformatics, sequencing, histology, flow cytometry, microscopy, mass cytometry. We have a PET scanner, a whole bunch of things. So having that variety made me a very strong candidate for managing people. I wasn't just a PI managing a team of highly skilled scientists. I was someone who had actually been there. So very briefly, I'll go over the landscape of Canada's funding, or lack thereof. So that was a joke for the Canadians. So core facility landscape in Canada, just to give you an idea, there's about 220 biomedical core facilities in Canada, representing about $1 billion worth of infrastructure, which is pretty small compared to America, but it's about 30,000 researchers, 10,000 laboratories. This is a map of Canada. Each of the circles represent the biomedical core facilities that I've tracked in my thesis for biomedical research. So you can see we have the province of Ontario with 76 and 92 in the province of Quebec, which are very popular. That's where most of our population lives. So it's distributed, and there's small core facilities. The idea of core facilities in Canada is very new. As I said, accidental. For a lot of us, there was no strategic planning about these core facilities. They all just kind of came to be, or they grew from someone that was able to form some sort of cost recovery model. So this is kind of an idea of what the roles and responsibilities are in the Canadian ecosystem. It's not perfect, but we're trying to figure out who has the best opportunity to help in what direction for understanding core facilities and their place in the ecosystem of Canada. Canada is working towards a national research strategy like other countries have done. There's a report that we are anticipating to come out in the next year with a national strategy so that we can understand the idea of how they're going to be investing their infrastructure and what their focuses are going to be, or what their investment plans are. So we're very highly anticipating that. Okay, research funding landscape. I've kind of broken this into a couple of categories here. So how are our research questions funded? So this is like, who are our users? How do they get their money? This is tri-council funding. It's divided into 3 categories: health sciences, applied sciences, and social sciences. It's very similar to the European model, who also have a tri-council model. So these are all our users. They come with their CIHA money to use at our core facilities. How are core facilities funded? That's done with the Canadian Foundation of Innovation, and they fund about 90% of the core facilities. This is equivalent to your S10 or your P20s or your P30s that you have here at the NIH. We just have one grant competition, but it recently is in 2024, split into 3 different categories: health sciences, social sciences, core facilities. This is a brand new stream that was never done before. This is how the government is now spending millions of dollars intentionally to create core facilities. And then we have something called the IOF, the Innovation Operating Fund. And this is a fund that is given to the university that is awarded a CFI. And it's up to the discretion of the university in how much they give you. So I know that this is a hot topic right now with the NIH. We usually receive, the university usually claws back between 8 and 15%, and the rest of that money flows in. Lately, that has not been the case. They've been taking almost all of it for overhead of building new buildings or whatever the computing cost of your facilities are. This is very untransparent in Canada right now, so it makes it really tricky when you're applying. You have, as I will explain, no funding for people in core facilities. So how are the scientists funded? Well, if you're in a core facility, you're typically funded by Tri-Council through your PI somehow, or you're funded through this IOF. So when the universities claw back the IOF, it really affects these scientists that work in these facilities. The funding is usually only a 5-year max, which I'm sure is the same here as well. But the one bonus that core facility science have that other laboratory scientists don't have is that there is institutional funding and there is institutional support. It does exist on some level, but it's not very common. It is growing in popularity as the impact of one scientist in a core facility tends to be more valuable than, well, not more valuable, but it seems to be something that the university is interested in investing in. But there's still no long-term solution for this. And there's also big gaps in between our CFI funding. Those competitions only run every 2 years. You get 5 years of funding. And I was awarded as CFI in 2022, and the money was just released in December of 2024. So that is a 1.5 year gap or longer that I had to rely on philanthropy to fund my scientists. Okay, so very generally, this is my own experience of what it is for the 3 career paths. And if any Canadians want to comment on this at the end, please do. So we have like 4: academia, industry, government, and core facility. None of the last one not being a properly developed field, but there is some movement into making it so. So this is the most traditional path. You either become a faculty member or you go into the lab. You need your regular accreditations there, and that pathway and in that order to be assistant professor, associate professor, professor. In the laboratory, it could be a combination of any of these expertise. You usually start off as a research assistant, you graduate to a research associate, and in some labs, some of the bigger labs, you have a manager. and that was where it ends. So if you achieve that in the first 10 years, that's what you do for forever until you find another job. So you're kind of stuck in that position. There is no career ladder after that. Industry and government is very similar. You go junior scientist, senior scientist, but then you have a few more options at the end. You can go into management and leadership without accruing any extra accreditation. You can become a consultant, or you can work in business development. And usually they flip around a lot, right? So they go from, I'm going to take my business development, I'm going to go into academia, maybe even get a faculty position and start the whole thing over again. So core scientists are the newest kind of flavor to the mix, and again, very new in Canada. Junior scientist, senior scientist, manager, you do need some sort of accreditation usually. Most universities have like a grading system like you guys have here. So in my institution, for instance, it goes from grade 1 to grade 9. And then once you hit grade 9, which is usually a highly skilled scientist that runs like a big instrument, that's it. There is no jumping to the other grades, which are considered leadership and management, unless you have some sort of extra certification, which in my case was a leadership course. And then you can also do the route of consulting. And again, once you get to that bottom, everybody just starts flipping around into different things, so they don't stay stagnant. Some people stay in academia forever. So I'm just going to do a very quick plug on the CNSP and what we're working on. And so this is the Canadian Network for Scientific Platforms that I'm on the executive of. And I talked about this very briefly at the beginning. I did like a little 5 minutes, and I'm not going to go back into it. But basically, we create connections, we create networking, resourcing. We are the ABRF of Canada, and we work on advocacy. And what we're doing is we're talking between the scientists. We have monthly sessions where we have hot topics called a community conversation, and we invite scientists to come and have their input, and then we kind of feed that back to the governing body. We have direct connections with the president and vice president of CFI. We talk to them, and we advise them and give them recommendations for where we think the direction of core facilities are going, and thankfully they're mostly on board with what we've been telling them. And they have been moving. Like, we have core facility stream funding now, so we've had our moderate success. We also, and that's what I mean, we create opportunities, and right now we're trying to create scientific literature, because right now it's kind of show me the facts. So that's what we're doing. I think I'm going to, this is my last slide, but I would like to mention that in my facility, what I do is, because all of my people, after 7 years, I haven't lost a single scientist. All of the scientists I've managed to retain for 7 years. And they are all PhD, top class scientists. So what have I done? I always get asked, what have you done to retain them? Every year I usually do a PDP with them. So a PDP is a performance dialogue thing, which everyone usually rolls their eyes at, but I use them a little differently than everyone else. I sit down with them and we kind of create a 5-year plan of like, what do you want to see yourself in 5 years? Do you want a faculty position? Do you want to work in industry? Do you want to write grants? Do you want more independence? Do you want students? Do you want a project? And I give them, do you want to travel? Do you want to develop a protocol? And I sit down with them and we work towards that. And every year we sit down, we see how that plan is going. Sometimes it changes, sometimes it doesn't. And we have created a really robust retention strategy that has attracted a lot of people to apply to our facility. So for instance, one of my scientists, she doesn't want to have a faculty position, she just wants to teach a course. So we've created a course for her to teach. And then she wanted the ability to travel more, and it was very expensive because she wanted to do stuff that is like the World Imaging Society, and the membership fees were like $8,000 a year. So we worked with the vendors actually to get sponsorship for memberships to get her to these conferences, and it's made our facility more popular, and it's strengthened our ties working with vendors as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions about retention, as we've had some good success in that stream. And I will leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, everyone's going to run out, hit up the vendors for sponsorship. That's what I'm expecting. So, questions? Wow, we're perfect. No questions. Surely someone has a question.
Test. Okay, there we go. Also, for my project, especially if you are core staff, please share your thoughts about what we're doing, because I would love to know generally what the community thinks about that kind of a matrix.
You got to slide it forward.
Hi, I'm Colleen Sunderland. I'm from the University of Alberta in Canada. So I had a question about these core ladders. So it's something we really want to implement at our institution, but some of the pushback that I get is around, well, we don't have more money to push someone up, even if they're very deserving of a promotion. So I'm wondering if you've encountered any of these kind of challenges at your institution.
So yes, at the administrative level, that is true, but what we came back and showed the administration is that it's so much more money to have to bring someone in, train them, especially knowing that as soon as you train them, they're going to leave. So I was talking about that histo accreditation. That's exactly what happened. People would come fresh with their degree. They would come into the core. They would get a little bit of experience, and they were gone. So it was costing a lot of money just to have to redo training. And it meant that a lot of projects were pushed behind. So when we had enough of those examples, we went to the administration and went, listen, there is a certificate, they have the certificate, they need to get paid for this certificate. And that worked.
As I would add, not for my core, but I think I know from the experience of others, of figuring out industry salaries for that role to show someone that has these skills is highly desirable elsewhere. They will make more money. So it's worth an investment, not even to that scale, half of that probably, to keep that person in this role. I haven't tried that, but I think others have.
You gotta show them what they're gonna lose. Honestly, like you figure out what that person is worth and you say, if this person leaves, this is what it will cost me, just like that turnover metric. You know, there are other creative ways that I've had to use because I can't make them go any higher without them taking like an entire leadership course and then, oh, my mic died. Oh, did it? Is it good now? Oh, that was weird. Most of my scientists have no interest in doing management. One of my scientists was like, I just want to have more independence. So we pushed our administration for like, if you won't give them a raise and I can't give them bonuses, then I'm going to give them more responsibility of what they wanted. They wanted to do a CHR grant application, and we got special permission for them to get one, and they got it. And so they came with their own funding, and they got, you know, more support by having a team of students. So we had to get kind of creative to retain them. We also found that free coffee really helped. So I pay for free coffee all day, and it's literally a line item. And that helps retain people sometimes, but yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question. I guess I have two questions, really. The first is about your rubric, Anna, and what are you going to do when everyone plugs in and it's a mess, that people aren't where they're supposed to be, that maybe people have gotten a higher level than they should, or they really need to be promoted, but they, you know, can't be, or yeah.
So to me, it's a feature, not a bug, if someone identifies that. Because either there's a lagging in expectations of their performance. Your actual performance is a level 2, but we have you at a 3. So what's going on with your independence or the level of oversight that you need, that you're not really working at the level that I expect you to? Or it's a reason for someone who is maybe stuck at a 3 to identify that they might need to leave. And that's not, for me, it's a problem for the core, but it might be helpful to an individual person to get that kind of information about their career and make decisions. And maybe that contributes to the conversation that we have with higher up levels of, look, we're stuck here. We can't do this. We need to promote these people. We have the information that good people have left. Please help us to solve it. It's a problem.
My second question is more about like professional development plans and retention. I just like, when, obviously, like you may use it as a tool for recruitment, like showing that you offer these opportunities and that's important to you. But at what stage of a person's career or time in the lab do you begin having these conversations? Is kind of one part. How do you handle if you can't really give them what they want, what they're asking for isn't really within reach, even at the beginning, right, when you're having these conversations? And third, how do you handle someone that doesn't want professional development or doesn't know what they want, and how do you try to steer them in a way that makes sense?
Assuming this one's for me. I have the conversation of expectations on day one. It's part of my recruiting strategy. I tell them they don't have to have an answer for me right away, but I invite them to think about it, because a lot of them haven't, especially depending on how young or old. Some people walk in and they're like, I want faculty, which I've done. It was very hard. And they still retain them. They still work at my facility as a faculty member. I meet with them every year to check up, because, you know, things change, exposures change, they get new ideas. Now, if I know that something's just not going to happen, I tell them right. I have to be honest with them. I have to set that expectation of like, I know you want to be a grade 10, but there's just no pathway forward to that right now. If you want something else, you know, let's have a conversation about that instead. What was the second half of your question?
It was about the people who maybe don't want to advance or don't have any idea.
So I do have one guy that I work with who used to manage a lab. He had 16 people. His supervisor was in a terrible car accident, and she had severe brain damage from it. And he was like, he had a college degree, and he went from having a lab with like 4 or 5 staff and several students to managing the whole thing. He had a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation grant and a very high impact. He had to manage this team of people, and it was incredibly difficult. When the lab eventually wound down and the funding wound down, he came to me at my facility and he said, I want a job where I live for the weekend. I just want to press buttons on a machine, and I want to slow down. I don't want responsibility, even though he was overqualified for the position he was in. And I have to say, 2 months ago, he came to me and he's like, I'm ready for more responsibility again. You know, he had 4 years of just like, that was nice. I'm ready to go again. you know? And so now we're going to build a pathway for adding more responsibility to him and seeing what he wants to do. He wants to go for a more technical route and learn more techniques. So that's what we're working on. But, you know, it's fine if you don't want to go anywhere. How could I make your stay more comfortable? You know? Coffee helps again. Yes, coffee.
We have a candy line item in our office.
A candy line item, yes. You got to think creatively. And for professional development, I actually have a fund. I said it was really important for retention to start building that into our budget. So on an annual basis, I set aside $2,000 for every employee, all of my scientists, to make sure that they have that to travel, to participate in conferences, and take technical training if they'd like.
And that's what we have as well, is professional development funds. And I think it comes down to communication. So managing expectations.
Hi, Annette Jones, University of Hawaii Cancer Center. I'm just curious, like, how do you know when you need to add more staff or remove staff? Say there's increase in not only usage, but equipment, and they may refuse to like hire more people, so they're adding more responsibilities, which may or may not align with your current position. Is there any thoughts on that?
Well, metrics. It comes back to capacity. So how do you know you need to add more people? Is you've reached whatever capacity, maximum capacity that you have. Sometimes if it's instrumentation, the instrument can run longer. But if it's assisted use only, you just have to go to your leadership and say, you know, I'm stuck at this position. But then the question will be, at what level person should you bring in? And that's where something about the career ladder, you need to really think about who it is you need. So do you need another expert person to come in, or is it possible you could bring in someone who's more junior? And oftentimes that will help your administration find the funds for that more junior person who now has the ability to move up. One thing that UT Austin has that I really like is called permanent additional duties and temporary additional duties. So for some things, you know, you see a career ladder, and it might be hard to get to the next level, but if you've got someone who is doing something that is different, and you want to retain them and reward them, rather than giving a complete promotion, if you can just get them extra money and really acknowledge what it is they can do.
Mary Mar Lopez and Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. What happens when you have a core director? What is the next step? I haven't seen in institutions many options. I've seen only a senior core director as a possibility. And I think another point to this is, in situations where you hire the core director, you have your performance, the PMT, and then how do you justify to HR that there is a next step? So what kind of other duties are you going to put on top of a core director when they are not faculty, let's say? The core director is a staff member.
So I have one, but go ahead.
I'm interested in the answer to this question.
You have to be faculty in Canada to hold funds. So all of our core directors are faculty members.
And for me, I was a core director, and now I'm an institutional core director, so I'm over multiple cores. So that is a progression. But one thing that I was trying to do is find out if there's a way that we take someone who's senior and then have them do additional duties, and then that might be a progression as well. But those additional duties have to be additional work. So if you got someone who's very senior, they know a lot, and they might be closer to the end of their career. So having them mentor other core directors, how, you know, good, bad, can help all of the various core directors, and also gives that possibility of a promotion, or as I said before, at UT Austin, the permanent additional duties gets them more money.
And for this I, for my matrix, haven't really dug into yet. There are a lot of classified job titles at UT Austin that say some sort of director. There's assistant, associate director, which we're using. There's also director 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't really know what those people do or how that's different. So that's something to wade into of maybe what already exists that could be defined as the next step past just director.
Hello, my question is about soft skills. So you mentioned that a little bit, and I'm wondering how you motivate your core staff to really value those soft skills when their goal may be promotion, but from an HR perspective, those are not, to your point, included really in the job description, and they know they have to check certain boxes to get that promotion, but soft skills are not necessarily one of those. How can you instill in them to really value those core specific soft skills that are still really important to their role?
So for me, that really comes down to always communicating about what the values of the core facility are, like what it means to be part of our team. So if we really value customer service, talking about that at team meetings, really enforcing that this is important so that people have an understanding of what their job means for the higher level mission of the core and how that connects to research, but where customer service and these kind of soft skills contribute to that, to kind of give the context of why is that important for what they're doing, not just processing samples or whatever.
Well, just to add on to that, soft skills are important for everyone at every level, right? You have to demonstrate, I think as someone who actually runs like a company that does professional development, you kind of have to show them how it will make their lives better. It'll make them better at their jobs. It'll improve their relationships with their customers, with their bosses, with their colleagues, and even at home. There's a lot to be gained for learning soft skills to even develop better project management skills and communication and customer service. And that level of demonstrating good soft skills makes you benefits in the sense that you're more hireable, you're more likable, you can be more flexible, and you can move up the ladder.
And I'm going to add to that, there's a book that says, what got you here won't get you there, and it is the soft skills. So if you don't want to be a core director forever, you could go jump into management, but at management, it's the soft skills. It isn't your technical background. So, always useful.
Yeah.
I have a question that's kind of related to career path, but more so to like CORE's funding and how that relates. How transparent are you with your core staff about your funding situation? And I'm coming from like a early core situation where there's not that many staff and the funding is not as concrete. Kind of when are you more transparent if there's potential concerns about, you know, lower funding or not getting the funding you're looking for?
I can go with it. I love to bore my staff with the details of the budget every single year. I tell them how much we're making, how much we're losing, what we're spending on what. I'm completely transparent about it because I think it's important that they know for their own pathways and careers and for their own education of like what it takes to run a core. They don't love hearing it. They would rather me talk about literally anything else. But they sit there and they listen to it, and they usually have really great input and be like, you know, I don't think we need to spend this much here. I think it would be valuable to spend more here. So on my annual budget review, when I have to explain why I spend so much money on coffee, they understand where it had to come from. You know, it's like if you want more coffee, we have to take it from somewhere else in the budget. Where can we be more efficient? And they usually have really great insight because they're the ones actually spending the money. They're the ones doing the work. They should be involved in the process of forming the budget.
Then for me, when I was a core director, it wasn't really an issue for money. So why bother someone if it's not an issue? But nowadays, transparency. So it's a different era right now. Or if you're in at the end of a grant, et cetera, you kind of need to know, if you're core staff, whether or not you should be looking for a job or whether or not you're going to be supported. So If you don't get the information you want, ask for the information you want, because most likely, it's just oversight that they haven't told you. And if you still don't get the answer, that might be your answer.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you all.
Thanks, guys. Well done.